Good morning. It's Tuesday, February 4 in Altoona, Iowa. It was 25 degrees when I woke up this morning. It's not supposed to snow today or tomorrow, and that's good because I'm driving south tomorrow morning. Last night, I went to the local caucus near my hotel in Altoona. I left here at 6:30. The caucus was supposed to start at 7. I drove to a nearby elementary school and parked in a lot that was not full of cars. This puzzled me, but it turns out that the lots closer to the entrance were all full, so I would have ended up there anyway. There weren't any signs showing which entrance to use, but it's an elementary school. You just keep trying doors till you get in. As soon as I went in, I was surprised at the amount of politicking going on. When I identified myself as a member of the press or an observer, I was supposed to check in. They were ready for me. They gave me this, which says I'm a member of the press or an observer. I got that from a woman in a Warren t-shirt who also was a member of the press and an observer. It was a little bit unsettling to have the people who register you be wearing a Mayor Pete t-shirt or a Warren t-shirt or some sort of political affiliation. But the caucuses are not like a formal primary or final election. They are a caucus, and politicking is supposed to go on, and it did. As I walked into the gymnasium at the elementary school, there were a lot of chairs spread out, but almost no one was sitting in them. The people had split into their various supporter groups as soon as they entered. I remember as I entered, a woman said, "Where are you going to sit?" I said, "I don't know." And she said, "You want to sit with us?" And I went, "No, I'm going to sit wherever I can get the best shot of what's going on." But that's the way it was from the outset. Bernie was in one corner, Biden was in front of him, sitting at some tables that kids would probably eat off of. Amy was over in that same corner, but further back. Mayor Pete was kind of in the middle. Elizabeth Warren was on the other extreme, and the Yang people were sitting in chairs in the seats. I can make this short because it was a simple procedure. The nice women running the event first elected a chair and a secretary, and the easy way to describe that is the woman running it said, "Does anyone else want this job?" No one else did. Then she took numbered presidential preference ballots, and I had expected those would be passed out as you walked in. In other words, you come in, you're number 142, you get a ballot that says 142. Remember, they needed to know the total number of delegates present, not delegates, total number of voters present, so that they could determine viability, and viability is 15% of the total present. However, the way this was determined here was the chairperson walked over to each individual group, and voter by voter, she passed out a numbered presidential preference sheet. That had two sides, round one and round two. When she finished, and this took her a while, she went back up to the front and said, "Does anyone not have a presidential preference?" And it turns out one of the Warren people, or the people in the Warren group, did not have one. So she personally walked out and gave it to that person. The total number of voters present was 201. 15% of 200 is 30. But because there were 201, she set the viability standard at 31 delegates. So if any presidential candidate got less than 31 delegates, that candidate was not viable. Then they conducted the first round of voting. Was there politicking going on? Yes, it was obvious to everyone that the Yang group wasn't going to be viable. So those 7 people got visits from all of the other precinct captains. There was a long dialogue between a Warren person and one of the Yang people. I don't think any minds were changed, and that's what's supposed to happen. That's what did happen. The results. I have some cheesy graphics to put up. In the first round of voting, Bernie had 59, Mayor Pete had 40, Joe Biden had 32, Elizabeth Warren had 34, Amy Klobuchar had 29, and Andrew Yang had 7. I should point out that if you were a Steyer supporter, you were out of luck unless you were willing to act as precinct captain yourself. And some hardy souls probably would be willing to do that, but others, realizing they're the only Steyer person there, probably would have immediately gone to one of the other groups. There was no one there from Bennett, no one there from Bloomberg, etc. There were printed sheets of paper in a basket that everyone could get, and the Yang person didn't get that in handwritten Yang, but no one was confused. Nothing went awry here. After the first round results were tallied and totaled 201, the chair announced that everyone who had supported a viable candidate was locked into that candidate, could not change their vote, and could go home if they wanted to. Now, they could stay around for whatever party business was going to happen, but basically they were excused. And essentially everyone did go home. And as they went home, they folded up the chairs that no one had used and put them away. Round 2 voting began, and that's really simply a question of where the 7 Yang supporters would go. As it turns out, 2 of them went to Bernie, 2 of them went to Mayor Pete, 1 went to Elizabeth Warren, and 2 went to Amy Klobuchar. And they went to Amy to make her viable. Now, maybe Amy was their second choice in the first place, but Iowans are so nice that I could see them going, wow, there's 29 people here just shy of the viability threshold. I'm going to go put them over the viability threshold. So, all 5 candidates ended up viable and eligible for delegates to the county convention. This is the local convention. It goes county, then it goes congressional district, then it goes state. Well, everyone was gone by now, but the real question was, how are these delegates going to be divided? I asked the chairperson how many delegates would come from this precinct, and the answer was 9. So how to divide up this 9? I have a graphic that shows how that worked out too. Bernie's 61 votes ended up being 2.73. The calculation is number of votes, 61, times number of delegates, 9, equals, in this case, 549, divided by 201, that's the total number of voters present. That comes out to 2.73 delegates. That gets rounded up to 3. Mayor Pete ended up with 42. Do the math for him, it comes out to 378 divided by 201. He got 1.88 delegates. Round that up to 2. Elizabeth Warren, 35. The math comes out to 315. Divide by 201, it's 1.567 or 1.57. Very close to 1.5. However, that gets rounded up to 2. Joe Biden with 32, just a couple less than Elizabeth Warren. His math comes out to 288 divided by 201 is 1.43 delegates. That gets rounded down to 1. Amy Klobuchar's math comes out to 279 divided by 201 is 1.388. That gets rounded down to 1. So, final delegate counts: Bernie 3, Mayor Pete 2, Elizabeth Warren 2, Joe Biden 1, Amy Klobuchar 1. I'm not going to spin this because there are plenty of people still waiting for results as I make this video, but it is a little bit unsettling that Bernie, with 61 votes, gets 3 times as many delegates as Amy Klobuchar or Joe Biden, even though he does not have even double their number of voters in support. This rounding issue does make the results disproportionate. I taped the chairperson and the secretary trying to figure out who got what. The nice observer from the Warren campaign had an app, and she ran the results through the app and told them what the results were. But there was no effort to be pushy here. Everybody was honest. The calculations are correct. I went home and did them by myself. And it is what it is. One of the changes to the caucus rules this year is that the first round results were to be reported to national headquarters, not national headquarters, state headquarters. Thus, Andrew Yang, who ends up with no delegates, would be reported as having 7 of 201 voters in support. And that works out to 3.5%, which oddly is fairly close to what his polling number was. As far as I can tell, the person who outperformed was Amy Klobuchar. She obviously got 15% of the voters who turned out, and I've never seen a poll result for her in Iowa that's that high. The rest of them you can figure out by yourself. That's it on the caucus. I have one more video to get out today, which I'm titling Best of, Worst of. I've been here for 4 months. I've attended several dozen speeches and events by Democratic candidates. If you're interested in my observations of and reflections on 4 months in Iowa during this caucus process, please subscribe or at least check back later. I hope this helps. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like this political content, please subscribe. And yes, I will continue to offer commentaries on the Democratic primaries and selection process as the spring unfolds. I won't be on the ground anymore, but with the exposure I've had to these candidates in Iowa, I don't honestly think I need to be. Thanks for watching.